Most people haven't realized this yet, but NFL players are fighting for key contract incentives, and here's how you can take advantage in Week 18. But there's obviously way more than 10 players with a lot on the line this week. If you want the full cheat sheet that I put together with over 50 incentives and milestones, I'll send it to you for free. Just go to bonusnfl.com or hit the first link in the description. Some people will say all this stuff is already priced in, but that's a huge mistake. We already cashed a 50 to 1,000 slip using this exact information, so let's get into it. So we're starting with Sam Darnold. He's got 500K in the line for just 150 passing yards, another 500K if he throws 3 touchdowns. He only threw for 147 last week, which was his season low, but he's hit the 3 TD mark 3 different times this year. So the milli is definitely in play for Darnold. Also, the 49ers just got destroyed by Caleb Williams, so why not Sam, right? Also, this is a huge week for motivation, so I'm going to be going through some of those implications as we go here. The Seahawks, I'm going to go as like a 1 to 10 scale. 10 for the Seahawks. The winner gets the NFC West, number 1 seed, and a bye. So they definitely need to win. The loser of that game falls to the number 5 seed. So definitely a winner take all scenario for them. And yeah, that 150-yard bonus, basically a layup. And then the matchup is one that quietly forces you into the air. The 49ers have allowed the 9th most passing yards per game, 29 passing TDs, which is the 6th most. So a really nice spot here. They just let Caleb Williams throw for 330 and 2 TDs last week. So the ceiling outcomes are definitely there for Sam Darnold. So I think that if we wanted to kind of get an opportunity for him to cash both of those checks, I think this is a really strong matchup for him to do that. And I think it's a legit bonus watch for Sam Darnold and one of the ones that's going to be an anchor for me this week across fantasy and across my picks. Rico Dowdle, 7 yards away from a $1 million bonus. Let's start with the motivation, though. A win clinches the NFC South and the number 4 seed outright. There's no real motivational questions here. A win assures them a playoff spot. Obviously, both sides of this game, the Bucs have a lot to play for as well as they're fighting for their playoff lives. But Rico Dowdle, 7 more scrimmage yards unlocks an additional $1 million, but a touchdown adds an additional $250K. So in a must-win game, expecting Carolina to lean on Dowdle early and often. So he's basically a lock to hit that $1 million bonus. We've been talking about the scrimmage yards prop for him for what feels like weeks now, and he's been hitting for those pretty consistently for us, which is great. This Tampa Bay game is kind of interesting, right? They need to be competitive. They obviously need to play well, but the Tampa Bay Bucs, what most people probably don't realize, is they've allowed the most receiving yards to running backs in the NFL. They also give up the 7th most fantasy points per game to running backs. So really nice spot for Dowdle here. Also, they've struggled pretty mightily against wide receiver 1. So still really like Ted McMillan in this game. He's in one of the other motivation videos that you can see on the channel, but we're focusing on the incentive stuff. And I think that Dowdle is one of those situations where we get the lead back, high efficiency, and then we get that incentive fuel on top of that. So I think it's obviously a yes that he gets to the 1 million, but I think in one of those, one of those situations where if he does score a TD, a little bit of extra juice never hurt anyone. Let's talk about Saquon Barkley. 87 scrimmage yards away from 250K, and the matchup couldn't be better. It's Washington. He just gashed them for 132 yards, 6.3 yards per carry in week 16. So the motivation and the matchup line up perfectly in the spot. Motivation-wise, I have them at a 5. They can still reach the number 2 seed with the win and the Bears loss, but they've openly talked about it. Their coaches stated that the team may not play their starters the entire game. So that's the risk here, but I do think 87 scrimmage yards for Saquon very much in play for that extra 250K incentive. And then this is a defense that's been run through all year. They've allowed the 5th most fantasy points per game to running backs, the 3rd most rushing yards, and Saquon himself just a few weeks ago ran all over them. So I think if we look back at week 17, the defense kind of sold out to stop the run in what was like a pouring rain game, and Saquon looked healthy. It was more of just the environment, I think, than the player. So I'm all in on the 87 scrimmage yards from him. I think if Philly does play their starters, Barkley is one of the most bullish bets on the board to clear 87 scrimmage yards, and I think that this is a much softer look than last week. But if your fantasy season isn't going how you hoped, this may help. I've teamed up with DraftKings Pick 6, the official daily fantasy sports partner of the NFL, to give you another way to make game day more interesting. Here's exactly how it works. You just pick more or less on 2 or more player stats, passing yards, touchdowns, things like that. Then it's basically you calling how a player performs and seeing your picks come to life on every snap. And here's the part you should know. Right now, new DraftKings customers who play $5 or more get $50 in Pick 6 credits instantly. So if you're new, you play $5 or more and they drop $50 in Pick 6 credits right into your account. account, all you need to do is download the DraftKings Pick 6 app and use promo code HOLKA to unlock that offer. In partnership with DraftKings Pick 6, the crown is yours. Tony Pollard. 66 rushing yards gets him an additional $250K bonus, but over the last month, he's averaging 113 yards and over 20 touches per game. So that momentum can carry him to a big payday in this one. Obviously, Tennessee has absolutely nothing to play for, so their motivation is a 1. They're 3-13, no playoff or seeding implications there. They're also playing the Jaguars, who are basically playing for everything at this point. So that's the concern. 66 yards for an additional $250K. He's cleared 85 rush yards in each of his last 4 games. So it's definitely there. He's still getting fed. Obviously, the carries have been there, 18, 21, 14, 25 in that same stretch. So I think their plan is kind of to just give Pollard the ball and live with the result at this point. It is a tough matchup, but I think at the running back position, above all else, all you just need is volume. So I'm not fading him, a guy that's this close to cashing that payday. Definitely not fading him if the volume is going to be there, which it should be. Keenan Allen, another one that we've been benefiting from so far over the last few weeks as we've been tracking this incentive stuff pretty closely. But I'm going to put the motivation at a 2 for the Chargers. While the seeding improvements are mathematically possible, Justin Herbert is going to be rested in this game. So that signals to me kind of a limited competitive intent here. So he's going to have to do it. Keenan Allen, that is going to have to do it with Trey Lance against a fully motivated Denver team, which is not ideal. He's basically locked into that $250K after just 9 more yards. But if he somehow gets 6 catches, that's another $750K. So the problem isn't that the problem is he hasn't hit that mark since week 7. And obviously he gets Denver and he'll have to do it with Trey Lance. So that's what we're looking at here. And I think the role has shrank a little bit, but he still is earning targets. So Quentin Johnston has missed a little bit of time over this season, but it comes down to Denver is just a really tough matchup. But if they're going to bring a lot of pressure, we might end up getting a few extra targets for Keenan Allen, who's been one of their blitz beaters this year. So still bullish on this one from a reception standpoint. And I think that Trey Lance would be smart to lean on him in this game. And that would benefit, obviously, the Chargers, but then monetarily benefit Keenan Allen. Stefon Diggs. So the incentive here, obviously he's hit 2 weeks in a row for us, which is great on this exact video, but grabbing himself those 2 500K bonuses in the process was obviously awesome. But the focal point of the Patriots offense at this point, 8 more catches in week 18 gets him another $500,000. So I expect him to be very motivated. This team in general, I'm ranking this as a 9. They can still earn the number 1 seed with a win and a Broncos loss. Clear top seed motivation remains here for the New England Patriots. And again, 8 receptions earns Diggs another 500K. Back-to-back weeks, 9 catches, 10 targets for 138 in week 16, then went 6 for 6, 101 and a touchdown in week 17. So that's the exact kind of reception pace that we need to have a chance at that 8-catch incentive week. And you'll get a nice multiplier if you're willing to kind of move the slider there on that one. So the path to 8 catches, I think, is right there. We've already saw it. There's not a lot else to go to in this offense at this moment. And I don't think that there's going to be a situation here where they can stop him. They obviously have a lot of motivation, and I think he's going to be one of the top targets for Drake May. Yet again, we have one more guy to talk about in New England, but we'll save that for later on in this video. First, we got to talk about Kendrick Bourne. He's 49 receiving yards away from $250K and another team that's highly motivated. So the 49ers, I'm putting them at a 10. Winner take all stakes as Seattle's the number 1 seed and bye with a win. Meaningful drop in seeding with a loss, however. So $250K on the line for Kendrick Bourne. We've already kind of seen the ceiling here a few games this year. I guess a smaller role as of late, but he's still kind of been popping. 3 catches for 27 yards in week 16. And then he only had 1 catch in week 17, but it was a 25-yarder, showing a little bit of downfield pop there. So if we get a little bit more of a role here, I think it could be a situation where this one is at least notable. Seattle's kind of been a wide receiver sink this year. It's just not ideal. 7th fewest fantasy points to wide receivers. I think that it's kind of interesting, but not one of my favorite ones of the week. But it's so close, wanted to make sure and highlight it for you guys. One that's a little bit further away that I do like, though, is Deebo Samuel. So he's 93 receiving yards away for earning an additional $200K. 2 touchdowns earns him an additional $250K. So that might be a fun sweat. The problem is Washington has nothing to play for, giving them a motivation of 1. They've been eliminated, and then both their primary quarterbacks have been shut down for the season. And they get a Philly team that basically has everything to play for still. So 93 receiving yards gets an additional $200K. The role is kind of built for these like quick hit type of plays, though, in Cliff's kind of horizontal spread offense, which has been a really nice fit for Deebo. He just hasn't had those ceiling type of games with a lot of injuries, I think, at the quarterback position. But the touchdowns are pretty designed at this point. So I think that one's even a little bit interesting. The red zone usage has been there even when the yardage has not. So I think there's a chance that if Philly forces Washington to chase a little bit, that Deebo might be the shortcut to them, I guess, getting on the board a few times. Washington's defense has allowed the fourth most fantasy points to quarterbacks, second most to wide receivers. So Philly could put up a big number here, and we might get some garbage time for Deebo. Dawson Knox. So he is 7 yards away for an additional 100K, 6 grabs away from an additional 100K, and then 1 touchdown away from an additional 100K. So 300K on the line for Dawson Knox, all very achievable. He was inches away from a score last week with 5 grabs as the team's top tight end. So all of these are very live against the Jets team that's completely given up. I just think the yards is the safest on this one, obviously, just 7 yards away. He's been the featured tight end, obviously, with Kincaid out, and Knox was Buffalo's like featured weapon in the red zone as well. Had a drop, but also had a 1 yard short play as well. So I think it's one of those situations where Josh Allen is going to know exactly what's going on here with these incentives. Dawson Knox is his guy. He's really just one play away from cashing a big payday. So I think that he'll continue to be kind of that short yardage guy, and I think he can kind of redeem himself in week 18. The last guy we're going to talk about today is Hunter Henry. So I'm going to give, again, New England a 9. They can still earn the number 1 seed with a win and a Broncos loss. Clear top seed motivation remains here. But our incentive MVP outside of Stefon Diggs has already cashed 2 250K bonuses over the last 2 weeks. But one more game with 5 catches earns him an additional 250K. So the matchup's key here, though. The Dolphins have allowed the second most receptions to tight ends.